at some point, nobody understood Bitcoin,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because Bitcoin wasn't created at that point. Maybe
Yeah.
Satoshi, that was one person out of 8 billion. Then at
Yeah.
some point, you had 10 people understand. Then you have 100 people. Then you have 1,000 people. Then you have 10,000 people. And it keeps growing and growing. So at some point, the US government, nobody in the US government understood what Bitcoin was. Now, I would guarantee you that everybody in the US government has heard of Bitcoin, right? There are still people who are very, very against it. But then there are also people who are very, very bullish on it, right? So we went from 0 to, let's say, 3, like on average. Let's say some people understand it very well. Most people don't understand it at all, but they've heard of it, right? At some point, we'll go to a 5 where more people understand it very well and fewer people don't understand it at all. Eventually, at some point,
Mm-hmm.
there's going to be nobody who doesn't understand it at all, right?
Yeah.
And what I mean by higher highs and higher lows is on that basis of knowledge, right? So over time, the average amount of knowledge is going to increase. It went from 0 to, let's say, 1, 2, 5, 10, 20, 50. And at some point, we're going to have, like, at some previously we had, let's say, um, have you heard the news where people were saying that the US government actually has like 30,000 Bitcoin, but they're
Yeah.
supposed to
It's
have
not the 200 or
200,000,
whatever. Yeah. Yeah.
right? So they still have 30,000. They don't have 0. At some point, they had 0.
Mm-hmm.
So what I mean here is that we're going to have people who are against Bitcoin, and we're going to have people who are for Bitcoin. But as more Bitcoiners enter office, as more people figure out what Bitcoin is, we're going to have fewer and fewer people rejecting Bitcoin and rejecting bills that are supposed to be bullish for Bitcoin. But again,
Mm-hmm.
I agree with what people are saying, right? The
Right.
Bitcoin doesn't need the US government. If the
Right.
US government rejects Bitcoin, it's perfectly fine. Maybe it'll delay
Yeah.
the adoption process a little bit, 5, 10 years, whatever. Who cares? I
Mm-hmm.
don't care. I'm okay with that. I
Yep.
know that the US government needs Bitcoin and Bitcoin doesn't need the US government.
Yep.
Eventually, like McDonald's rejected Bitcoin, David Ramsey rejected, or
Yeah.
Dave Ramsey rejected Bitcoin, Microsoft rejected Bitcoin. At some point, they're not going to be able to get the amount of Bitcoin that they could get when they rejected it, right? You buy Bitcoin at the price you deserve. So if the US government rejects Bitcoin, whatever, they're going to, if they want to buy 1 million Bitcoin today, maybe it'll cost them what? A million Bitcoin will cost them, what is that?
Uh,
$10 billion?
billion. Yeah. I was gonna say a billion, 10 billion. Yeah.
$10 billion, something like that. Yeah, $10 billion,
Yep.
$12 billion. So today it'll cost them $12 billion.
Yeah.
At some point, it'll cost them $120 billion. At some point, it'll cost them $1.2
Yep.
trillion. At some point, they won't be able to get 1 million Bitcoin. It'll be impossible, right? Today, we have companies like, if you look at the top asset classes in the world, or the top assets in the world, you see that, let's say NVIDIA. Okay, so NVIDIA, I'm just looking at the numbers here. NVIDIA is worth
Mm-hmm.
$4.27 trillion. That means NVIDIA is worth 35 million Bitcoin, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
There's
That is
only 21
insane.
million, right? So
Right.
what's happening here, right? So what's happening here is over time we have higher highs and higher lows for the number of people who are willing to accept Bitcoin. More and more people are willing to accept it, and then as the price, if the price comes down, some of them are like, okay, no, I don't want this anymore. But then other people replace them. So
Yep.
I think it's what you said, the Trojan horse. Once somebody's elected, like let's say Trump is elected, he can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
Who's going to stop him from doing whatever he wants? He's
Right.
been doing whatever he's gone completely against what he ran, the platform he ran on. He said no war. He's supporting war, right? Other things that people have said that he's doing, and he said that he wouldn't do. I don't know what they are.
Yep.
I haven't really paid attention, but I know about the war thing, right? So over time, you're going to see people who are saying that I don't. We're not gonna make a serious. We're not going to please a certain number of people. They're going to say we're not serious about Bitcoin, and then they can go into office and they can be completely serious about Bitcoin. They can change everything,
Yeah.
right? People can lie, um, but over time, I think what we're going to see is that more and more people who are in the government are going to accept Bitcoin. They're going to understand Bitcoin. They're going to have Bitcoin for themselves. If they don't, then they're going to lose.
Mm.
They're not going to have wealth. They're not going to have the best access, the access to the best asset in the world, right? They're not going to be able to build wealth like other people. And the people who have Bitcoin, they're going to be able to market themselves more, right? They're going to be able to run a better campaign because they have Bitcoin to pay for it. And that just makes them more powerful. So I think what you were saying is going to be correct. We're going to see more and more people going into the government who are studying Bitcoin, who have figured out what it is, who actually want the U.S. to be to continue to be the superpower of the world. But if the U.S. government, they know that if the U.S. government doesn't adopt Bitcoin, then it won't be the superpower of the world. So I do think that over time, we'll have politicians in office who want to talk about Bitcoin, who want to push Bitcoin adoption, who want to create a strategic Bitcoin reserve, and who are willing to use some of the assets that the U.S. government has, some of the income that the U.S. government is getting to buy Bitcoin. I don't know if that's happened yet. I don't think it is. I mean, it isn't public if it has, but at some point it will. And who knows? Maybe at that point the U.S. government doesn't have they don't have the resources to buy 1 million Bitcoin. But the later that gets, the more difficult it'll be. Like I said, at some point it'll cost 1.2 trillion, then it'll cost 12 trillion, then it'll cost 120 trillion, right? It'll keep going up. The number will keep rising until at some point again, back to the main concept, Bitcoin runs out at every price.
Mm-hmm.
Those chunks of 1 million Bitcoin are going to run out. There's only 21 of them, right? Not even 21, 20, because there isn't even 21 million full Bitcoin. A lot of Bitcoin are lost. Strategy is not going to sell their Bitcoin. Satoshi Nakamoto is probably not going to sell their Bitcoin. So a lot of that Bitcoin is already gone. People who have held Bitcoin for a while, I think something like 70% of it is held by individuals who've held for a very long time. They're probably not going to sell, right? Why would they sell to the US government? If they understand what Bitcoin is, why would they want dollars for it? So at some point, what you're going to see is less and less Bitcoin is being sold. People are going to have to sell. They're going to have to sell less of their Bitcoin in order to sustain their lifestyle.
Yep.
And it just I don't know. I don't know how people don't get it. I don't know how people don't see it.
I think one of the big things that, again, it's hard to see or hard to fathom in a way, but there are, like you said, 70+% of the private individuals own the Bitcoin, and that transfer of wealth will happen and has to happen from these massive entities, corporations, countries, nation states, sovereign, wealth funds to those individuals. Because a lot of those people, like you said, won't sell. They won't sell at 1 million. They're not going to sell at 5. They might 10. You might be talking 50 million, 100 million per coin. Like then, some of these people will sell at these points, but what then happens by necessity, those people now start becoming the wealthiest people, or they are the wealthiest people in the world. But that now they're saying, hey, I'm taking this and I'm quickly turning it into my campaign fund, because I'm going in to actually take the government and I'm going to reduce it to the size it should be. And I think that's the thing that's hard for the average person, and even a lot of Bitcoiners, to kind of extrapolate out and see, like there's a lot of us that will eventually, as a kid, I thought about being in office or something like that. So it's someday, if I'm fortunate enough to have that level of wealth or whatever it is, and it's like, no, I'm going to go use a fraction of that. I'm going to go do my job to reduce this world down to this government world down to what it should be. I think that's one of those things that doesn't get talked about very often, but that is coming. Like people are going to reduce things down to size, because the Bitcoiners, liberty-minded, sovereign-minded, libertarian, whatever you want to call, those people are coming, and they're going to have a lot of wealth transferred to them from these entities that are saying, hey, would you pay, or would you sell for 10 million? Would you sell for 20 million? Would you sell for 30 million? And then these hardcore people are gonna be like, I'll do it for 100, 50 million, 25 million, 200 million. And then there you go. Now they have the power. So I think that's,
but even then, they're not gonna have to sell all their Bitcoin.
No,
they're going to keep majority of it, right? They're going to sell,
it's going to be quick. I'm going to fund my campaign, or it's going to be like in and out. You're not going to, most of it will be Bitcoin still. Yeah. It's absolutely insane. And I think there's a time mismatch too with a lot of this. Like we conflate like times. Like George Gammon always talks about this, of like, it's an education problem. We did, him and the Jeff Bezos, the boots, over time, they agree on 98% of the stuff. But, George is caught up on the, we just got to educate people over time. And it's like, well, George, how are you going to out propagandize the state? The state has the currency printer right now. So how are you going to out educate them with their endless amounts of currency, going to intel agencies, going to schools, going to media outlets? How are you going to out propagandize that? You can't out educate the mass public through an entity that has an endless currency printer. So you have to rip that away from them somehow before you start really educating people long term. So that to me is a massive issue that people have a hard time grappling with as well. And it's going to take time. Like you said, it's going to take a little time for this to kind of play out. It's not some iceberg flipping overnight. The price moves could change, but the education still is going to lag even at that. Like if we go to $1 million tomorrow, it's not like, oh, all of a sudden, like people get Bitcoin, or you could go to 10 million tomorrow. It still doesn't mean anything. Like people still won't understand what's going on. And that's the thing I think that's going to take time.
the price is just a number, right? It's
Yeah,
not like people
like
are
you said earlier.
like,
Yeah,
if it goes to $1 million, a lot of people, like, the flip isn't going to switch for most people.
yeah,
They don't care. It's
yep,
at 120K. Most people still don't care,
right,
right?
right.
If you talk to people right now on the street, how many people are going to know what Bitcoin is? Probably like
Mm-hmm.
less than 5%, right? Something
Yep.
that I do. This is something weird. I don't know. Maybe it's my little ADHD side, the neurodivergent in me. Um, I try to think about how many people in the room that I'm in actually understand it,
Mm-hmm.
and just
Same.
I'm just guessing, like, it's probably less than 2 to 3%, right? Less
Yep.
than, even probably way less than that, even like less than 1% actually understand Bitcoin, and I'm probably the majority of it, right? Even I don't understand it all the way,
Yep.
right? Like, even I'm understanding, I'm learning new things every single day, right? And that's what shows you how early we are. There's people who, I mean, there is going to be a lot more buyers at $1 million than there are at 100 million, at 100K, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they understand it. Even the people who own a ton of Bitcoin. There was a guy at the conference. He was sitting next to me. He talked to me for a bit. He asked me, "Oh, do I?" He's like, "I recognize you." And we were talking for a bit. And he
Mm-hmm.
was saying how he's been in Bitcoin since 2016, and when I think it was Michael Saylor who talked about hash rate on he had it on the screen, and I turned to this guy, and he was googling what is hash power or what is hash rate. And keep in mind, he's been in Bitcoin, and he probably has like 100 Bitcoin. He's
Mm-hmm.
been in Bitcoin, he has a ton of it, and he doesn't know what hash rate is.
It's incredible.
That's what
Yep.
shows you how early we are.
Mm-hmm.
Most people have no clue about the majority of, like, I would guarantee you that 99% of people, 99.999% of people can't explain the difficulty adjustment. Maybe more than that, right?
Yeah.
Out of 8 billion people on earth, there's probably maybe
Oh my.
10, 20, 50,000 people who can
Mm-hmm.
explain the difficulty adjustment.
Yep.
Like, there are people out there who claim to understand what Bitcoin is, but they don't even know that there's 21 million Bitcoin, right? And that's fundamental. Like, that's the
Mm-hmm.
basis of everything. If you don't know what 21, if you don't know that there's 21 million Bitcoin, then you don't understand Bitcoin. Like, that's it, because that finite supply is the basis that Bitcoin is built on. So the education, I agree with you. I think the education is going to be very difficult uh, without the people who actually understand Bitcoin having enough wealth to spread it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think YouTube is changing that. Like, think about it. Our
I agree.
podcasts,
Yep.
my content, your content, so
Yep.
many more people are understanding Bitcoin because of it, and they're starting their own. It's a mind virus, right? It can expand forever.
Yes.
I noticed that you reached. I think you're above 10,000 subscribers now. Congrats on
Yeah.
that.
Just
It's
yeah.
huge.
Thank you.
But
Just
but
cross
you
12.
have
Yeah.
amazing, right? But
Yeah.
you have
Yeah.
over 8 billion people who can potentially listen to you. So think about how
Yep.
early you are,
So early.
right? And we'll keep going
Yep.
forever. Like, as at some point, I do think that our content is going to be obsolete because people are just going to be using
Yeah.
Bitcoin on a day
Yeah.
to day basis. But
Yep.
even then, people are probably going to be referring back to our videos thinking, wow, how did these guys know so early? Like,
Mm-hmm.
how did these guys know in 2025, 2024 that this is where things are going? But that's the thing. Everybody can just look at it. They can open their eyes and they can figure it out. We just seem like we know, like we know, like we're right and we can predict the future, but we can't, right? We're just going based on logic. Like, even we don't know what we don't know. Things could still go wrong, but I mean, I think what we're doing is we're putting our faith into our knowledge and our understanding of Bitcoin. And my like most of the time that I'm researching Bitcoin at this point is to see what could go wrong, where it could fail, and I haven't really found anything.
The next unbelievable educational video here is going to blow your mind. Check that out here. However, if you want to take action on what you're learning, go check out our Bitcoin-only sponsors here below. Meanwhile, it's the first Bitcoin-denominated life insurance company absolutely flipping the game on its head. Then you have Crowd Health. Instead of the garbage healthcare fiat system that we use, get your funding of bills through a network of Bitcoiners, like-minded people, or foundation, the only hardware wallets made in the USA, open source, privacy, sovereignty. Go check that out below.